Herman, you talked about power and you talked about destruction. Kimani Ichung'wah yesterday issued a warning and he said if you cause destruction, muvunje vitu in Nairobi, you will know who owns those businesses. That was his threat. You will quickly learn who owns those businesses. But speaking of power, stakeholders, EPRA, KenGen, Kenya Power have a session today to unbundle the new tariffs that Kenya Power has applied to apply, which would increase the cost of power significantly. But perhaps that is some of what they'll be demystifying today. How you've talked about it might be too late if William Ruto waits for the long term to address the rising cost of living. But isn't it prudent in the long term?
To do what? To
buckle in, spend what you can afford, and wait for things to ease up further down the road, as opposed to a populist move of applying subsidies such as now. Although you did state you don't support subsidies.
Before that, you asked what I meant by negotiation.
Yes, yes.
You negotiate for power in a modern state through what we call periodic elections. You convince the people. You negotiate with the people and they give you the power. It's a negotiation. Now, negotiation also involves contestations. There will be contestation that will go to the High Court, the Supreme Court, about the laws of election and this and the other. The contestation finally would end with the Supreme Court. And after the Supreme Court has pronounced itself, the negotiation and the contestations come to an end. Now you enter phase 2 of negotiations as the president, which means now you must negotiate with the citizens by doing that which you told them you will do. And the opposition is also there, and you must negotiate with them to allow you to rule by doing some of the things they are pushing you to do. And in the parliamentary democracies, they keep telling you you'll go home tomorrow. You know, you are the prime minister, but tomorrow there will be a vote of no confidence. The negotiations continue until the next election. In our circumstances, the negotiations did not end with the Supreme Court. That means the issue of legitimacy now creeps in. And what Raila is saying, he's not trying to prepare for 2027. He's saying the government is in power illegally. It's an illegitimate government. What does that mean? That means we want you out because you are not supposed to be in the first place. That is a very dangerous situation. And it's dangerous because the state does not have power more than the society. Society has more power than the state. The state may have the monopoly of weapons and force, but that is not. And how many policemen do we have in this country? Last time I checked, it was about 100,000 or so, even if you double 200. Against a population of 50 million people, maybe 30 adults. I mean, can the police even face 1 million citizens?
But
in the Philippines, it was the citizens.
On the flip side, in the Philippines, 1 million.
In the Philippines, it was the citizens who were standing between the armies to separate them. So it shows you it is society that has more power than the state when the rubber meets the road. And this is what people like Ichung'wah perhaps don't know. And I will forgive them. Maybe they don't understand. The power of the state is so limited. It is limited within that context of negotiations. If the negotiations allow you to govern, then you use the state power and state instruments. But if that is contested beyond the Supreme Court, it becomes a very tricky situation which every country must avoid. Now, to the cost of living. We all know why we are suffering. Let's not pretend. It is true the cost of living is bad. People are suffering. There are many Kenyans who have not taken children to school. They don't have fees. They are now being harassed by this so-called junior high school. New uniform. The kids would have continued with the uniform they had. Now you must buy new uniform, new culture, new what, new demands. It is really bad. And yet we know the problem. This problem, the solution does not lie in increasing taxes the way government is trying to do. The solution lies in two things. One, have a realistic budget. Stop budget padding, where you put things in the budget like those dams they are talking about, because you put money there which you will follow to it. Stop that.
Budgeting for corruption.
Don't budget for corruption. And number two, We have admitted from the highest level that we steal 1/3 of our budget. If you can just save a quarter of that 1/3, in our case, we are talking about 1 trillion shillings we steal. If you can save 500 billion shillings, you don't need to overtax Kenyans. So one, have realistic budgets, stop budgeting for corruption, and number two, step out there and stop corruption and save the Kenyans from further taxations. Look here, where does corruption in this country reside? It resides in the energy sector. The kind of shenanigans that goes on in the energy sector, you will cry if you knew a quarter of it. The president can stop that immediately. Some of the contracts we are entered into, the so-called independent power suppliers, surely we can tell them this, punda amechoka. You may want to continue making these abnormal profits, but in a country that's about to collapse. So be realistic. Let us renegotiate these deals.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.